Which 2 and 2 did you just recently put together? At the end of first grade the teacher asked the class, so who wants to stay here with me next year? We all threw up our hands up excited, and she picked one of us. That kid stayed behind when we went to second grade. I think about this once in a while and feel thankful she didn't pick me. Last time I thought about this I realized that I've been missing the mark. That specific student was being left behind that year and the teacher did it in the smoothest way possible. That's actually really sweet of her. Despite living in various houses growing up, my dad's closet would always smell the exact same way. He said it was the mothballs that he used. Later when I tried pot for the first time I said this smells like mothballs. Everyone looked at me funny, and it still took days until I finally realized what that meant. But my grandma's house always told us it was the skunks, which made sense to me as she lived out in the woods. Imagine my surprise at the first high school party I went to and was telling people it smells like my grandma's house in here. I have heard the word Zwazdovers many times. I have seen the word Zwazdovers many times. I only put together that they are the same word last week. Horse divorce. Always thought whipped cream was difficult to make. My friends and I would get excited and impressed that this great place would make their whipped cream in-house, as advertised for an extra $1.50. Can't begin to tell you how dumb I felt one day when I realized it is literally whipped cream. The blacks of the eye are black because there's nothing there. It's just a hole. You're seeing inside their eyeball, but you can't see anything because there's no light in there. The red pupils that you get from flash on a camera are from that light shining on your retinas and their blood supply. Some other animals, like cats, have a special tissue behind their retinas which can reflect back blue, green, or yellow light with flash. When I was a little kid, my dad had some friends over to drink beer and watch a movie. My mom made me play in the other room, because this wasn't a movie for kids, so I was playing in the living room as the men laughed, cracked jokes and loud music blasted from the other room. Eventually I wanted to see what the fuss was about, so I crept into the room in time to see a beefy, mostly naked man chained to a bed. Immediately the men start shouting, "Get him out of here. Turn off the movie. He shouldn't see this," and they hustle me out of the room. Being about 6 or 7, I put the pieces together and think they were watching that man get tortured. Later, in my teens, a different answer occurred to me. They were watching P. They were watching gay bondage P, but it didn't make sense. None of them were gay. My mom was right there. Nobody was masturbating. What was going on? Were they watching it for laughs? Was there a woman I didn't see in the video? Years later I realized what should have been obvious given my long association with the stage show. They had been watching the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I walked in on the scene where Rocky breaks free of Frank's bedroom to run for freedom. Not me, but a boss of mine just realized you can count the steps on a ladder to tell how tall it is. I did not know that. A chum bucket is where you'd keep fish guts, possibly explaining why Plankton's restaurant ain't so busy. WWE wrestler The Undertaker's longtime valet was named Paul Bearer, as in someone who carries your casket. I'm embarrassed. My ex-boss and I had a talk about this. When he debuted, both of us were under the impression that Paul Bearer was just his name. He said he learned it was a pun when his dad watched wrestling with him, and chuckled when he heard the name. I figured it out when David Schwimmer starred in a movie called The Paul Bearer. That comedian stories aren't completely true. In Spanish, hats are called sombrero because they make sombra, shade. I'm Spanish. I just realized that. That my neighbors, 3 teenage boys, were the ones who actually struck and killed my dog when I was 12. They blamed a mysterious white Mercedes for it. My dad, who was abroad at the time, was devastated. My stepmom totally bought into it. It was 40 years to realize that there was never any white Mercedes. PGP encryption that a lot of large businesses use stand for pretty good privacy. It's good to know data security is so important. I have a security insert and a few of them are funny like that. When you have, essentially, 2 doors that only allow 1 person at a time to go through, that's a man trap. And there is a networking protocol named Radius that had some scaling issues, among other things, so the people that invented the successor named a diameter because it's twice as good. Cul-de-sac means bottom of the bag, as in the only way out is where you came from, and my first language is French. That is, bag end, Bilbo's house. That got translated right back into cul-de-sac in French versions of the books. Jackie Chan is one person. My first language is Spanish, so I always thought it was Jack Y. Chan. The only movie I had seen him in was one with Owen Wilson, so I thought Owen Wilson was Jack and Chan was Jackie Chan. This is a world-class joke and needs to be written into the next comedy movie, regardless of context. Sonic the Hedgehog's best friend is named Miles per hour. Miles per hour. How the frick did this take nearly 30 years of life to see? Bruh. Whenever you see weather stations on the news and notice, hey, I wonder why they went with some random town in the area when there are other bigger ones nearby, it's likely because there's a regional airport or small airfield. They all need accurate weather for planes to take off, including wind direction, intensity, and barometric pressure, so they have all the equipment available to show the bigger picture locally. Well crap. This explains why my dinky little hometown of 4,000 was always on the news. I thought that was odd, but there is a private runway for planes, so that checks out. They call it a disease because it puts the body out of ease. I race cars in an amateur league. There is a blue 240 SX with the name Blue Bayou. I always thought they were from Louisiana or something until the other day when I realized it sounds like Blue Bayou. Why they are called contact lenses. Feels like there's something in my eye. Me, at my first contact lens fitting. Mr. Dink from the 90s cartoon Doug. He and his wife are Dinks because it stands for dual income, no kids. If you recall Mr. Dink showing things off, that's why. Very expensive. Hence the Dinklebergs in Fairly Odd Parents as well. Arrested Development. It wasn't just a description of the family's maturity level. Their property development was Arrested all 5 seasons, and I literally only figured this out watching the final episode. Say, that's the name of this show. My son was learning about the inhabitants of Nova Scotia called Acadians who got relocated to Louisiana. Where they're called Cajuns. Acadians equals Cajuns. Blew his mind. I sat here for a full 5 minutes trying to make sense of this until I realized that Arcadian is not the right pronunciation here. Not me, but my friends didn't know Tinder itself was a pun. Because when you swipe on each other, it's a match. Users are the Tinder for the match to light up a fire. Well crap. When I was about 19, shortly after Christmas, I went to get my wallet from the drawer next to my bed, only to find it missing. Thinking to myself, did I not take it out of my coat? I went to check, only to find it absent from there too. Panicking, I realize I've likely lost my wallet, or worse, had it stolen, and start ringing to cancel my debit cards. A few days later, my dad hands me my wallet. It's missing my bank cards, and about £30 in cash I had there, but things like my store loyalty cards, staff discount card for where I worked, and did cards. He says he found it in a nearby park, yet the wallet was clean. This is the same man who routinely needed to borrow money from me. Over $1,000 at this point I'm unlikely to see again. I only realized the other day it's very likely that he took the wallet from where I kept it, took the money out of my wallet, and then I realized it was missing before he had chance to put it back. Then merely claimed to find it a few days after to avoid admitting to taking the money himself. He would have been better off throwing it into the trash. But thankfully for you he isn't that smart and you have confirmation now of the person he is. Not extremely recently, but it took me 21 years to notice that my birthday is exactly 9 months after Valentine's Day. That's right, motherfucker. I'm a product of love. My birthday is 9 months from my dad's birthday. Also, growing up watching 90s sitcoms with emasculated guys, I developed the idea that married couples didn't frick very often, and so I put the two ideas together and assumed that I was the product of the one time my parents fricked. Turns out married couples actually frick a lot more than anyone lets on. That the word movies is slang that derives from moving picture. I'd never considered it slang before, and it still feels weird whenever I say it aloud now. Additionally, footage refers to the length of the film used. Just this week I realized that the icon for my clock app changes to show the current time. And so does the calendar app. The title of the kids' reading show Between the Lines is a play on the phrase reading between the lines. And also a play on patience and fortitude, the two stone lions outside the New York Public Library. That the lines on the back window of my car are the defroster. I live in AZ and park in the garage so I never get frost on my car. I am 37. Nurse here. You can actually see the brain connection being made when you tell a teenage boy that the brown ring around their dong is the scar from their circumcision. I told people I was uncircumcised when I was younger because I didn't really know what it was and no one ever explained it to me. Thanks to television, I thought it was strictly a Jewish thing. As soon as I realized that I had in fact been circumcised, it was an immediate realization that the brown ring was the scar. Mind blown. My babysitter became basically family. She was an old woman and took care of us for like 20 years. Before I was even born she cared for my siblings. One morning she didn't show up to work, didn't call, nothing. Same thing the next morning. My mom went to her house and found she had passed away. She came home and told us kids. We asked a few questions. How did you find her? Well, she died in her car. Oh, okay. She must have just died of old age. She was like 74 after all. Years later I figured it out. Like 13 years. I was telling a friend about who she was and what she meant to our family. Then it hit me. Like a ton of bricks. People don't just die randomly one morning sitting in their car at their house. Their bodies don't just shut down. She ended her life at the age of 70 something by carbon monoxide poisoning. My parents didn't want to tell me or my siblings because they didn't want it to impact how we thought of her and what she meant to us as a family. She suffered from severe depression all her life and as a kid I had no idea. It is truly heartbreaking because we loved her like a grandma. I wish she was still around. Alphabet equals alpha beta. Apparently everyone knows this. I'm in my 40s. Valve released Steam. Took me entirely too long to realize the pun. That my girlfriend taking a shower anytime her male co-worker would text her wasn't a coincidence, and this morning I got the luxury of watching her take a nude selfie for another man. Bro, comma. About a year ago, I was thinking of growing some pickles in my backyard. I was frustrated, however, when I was googling how to grow pickles, and I couldn't find the information I was looking for. I was the tender age of 29 years old. I was working at a deli a few years ago and one of the employees had the impression cucumbers and pickles were different plants. Didn't click it's a pickled vegetable. She also thought Pearl Harbor was when the Hawaiians bombed America. Fez from that 70s show is actually spelled Fez and it stands for foreign exchange student. Cause they couldn't say his name. Blew my mind. They say his real name once in the show. What he says is drowned out by a ringing school bell. But it is a combination of the names of the major cast members. They can't pronounce that, so they go with Fez. Howdy is short for how do you do. One of my wife's cousins is named Trey, but that isn't his real name. He has the same name as his father and grandfather, making him the third, or Tress, which got turned into Trey. I've known him for more than 10 years and just made the connection. Ray-Bans ban rays from your eyes. I'm embarrassed to admit I thought a guy named Raymond Ban owned a sunglasses business. Co-pilots aren't the main pilot's assistant. They're just another pilot. Wait until I tell you about the word cooperate. When I was little my parents split up. My mother explained to me that my father has his poop all over the place and needs to get his poop in a group before I could see him again. It wasn't until 20 years later that I figured out getting his poop in a group meant he needed to get his crap together. You've been visited by the good sleep capybara. Upvote within the next 5 seconds and you will be blessed with cozy and restful sleep. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.